Let's talk digital addiction. Internet addiction is actually not officially recognized as a psychological disorder in the DSM. That is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. That is a manual that provides diagnostic criteria for mental illnesses. And as I said, it is not recognized in there. However, some researchers have identified, and many mental health professionals acknowledge that patterns of continued use are capable of altering the mood, motivation, concentration of users, as well as producing a dissociating experience for them. Now, often there are other underlying reasons, such as low self esteem or loneliness or depression, that can contribute to a person using the internet problematically. For the most part, this is not the case for the average person. Most people, on average, can handle and consume an amount of technology that is not considered addictive behavior. Now, much of the research comes from neurological studies. They come from MRI studies that tell us what the brain is doing when it is engaged in social media use. And research does show that the reward center of the brain is the part of the brain that is called the nucleus accumbens, and it is the reward center, as I mentioned, and it was more activated after receiving positive social media feedback. And in another study, frequent social media users were shown to have greater activation in their amygdala, which is the part of the brain that is connected to impulsive behavior. This is also the part of the brain, the amygdala, that's also activated with people who use substances problematically. So, dopamine is the chemical that is associated with the brain's reward pathway, which influences our behaviors and habits and responses to positive experiences. And dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It is a chemical messenger in the brain that plays a role in motivation, reward, pleasure, as well as reinforcement learning. And it is associated with feelings of pleasure and satisfaction and does play a critical role, as I said, in digital addiction. So, as I mentioned earlier, when we engage in activities that bring reward or pleasure, such as receiving a like on social media or somebody comments positively on our post, or we receive positive comments and things like that, dopamine is released in the brain. And this activation of the brain's reward pathway reinforces the behavior and makes us more likely to repeat it. And this is how digital addiction sort of plays out. So it plays out in instant gratifications, and digital platforms, including social media, online games, and other apps, they're designed to provide instant gratification or immediate feedback and rewards. So, scrolling through social media, getting notifications, or achieving milestones in games, they all trigger that quick dopamine release, and that creates a cycle of wanting to seek instant gratification. Digital content is also addictive due to variable rewards, and this is where the rewards are unpredictable and intermittent. That means we don't know when they're coming. This is very similar to a casino slot machine. And this triggers even higher dopamine releases as the brain becomes more conditioned to anticipate the possibility of the award each time, but we never really know when it's coming. So we tend to engage with the platform even more. So for instance, after we post something, we will refresh and refresh and refresh the screen in search of likes or comments or shares. When it comes to habit formation, over time, the brain actually becomes accustomed to those dopamine surges, and it becomes a habit, and it makes it very difficult to disengage from these types of activities. And just the same as substance addiction, repeat exposure to dopamine activities can lead to a type of tolerance or even like a desensitization. And so over time, the brain becomes less responsive to the same level of dopamine. So that means that even more engagement to achieve the same level of pleasure is required. And we can see this with TikTok challenges, for instance, right? They are becoming more and more, what is the word? I think you know the word I'm thinking of right here, right? But they become exacerbated, right? And they go next level. And that is because of that level of tolerance and desensitization, right? So the norm isn't enough and you have to step it up a level. And then cravings and withdrawal are another aspect. When we are away from our digital devices, we can experience cravings for that dopamine rush, right? That comes with using them. And these cravings can lead to withdrawal-like symptoms, including irritability and restlessness, and that really strong desire to engage with content, to pick up the phone again or pick up the game. Very similar to other health addictions like smoking. So again, remember the goal is never to eliminate dopamine-driven experiences altogether, but let's create a healthier balance in how we engage with technology. So managing and controlling the release of dopamine while engaging with technology is really essential to maintaining a balanced and healthy relationship. So, of course, there are things that we can do. We can set goals and intentions. That means that before we use technology, let's be clear on why we're using it, right? What is our aim? What is our goal? Especially when you're working, it's so easy to get into endless scrolling behaviors out of habit when you're doing tasks like studying that may not necessarily interest you, unless it's this course, of course. But to set intentions means to define, hey, this is what I need to get done, and writing them down and really making informed decisions on why you are choosing to go online when you go online. This helps to stay focused. This helps to minimize that endless scrolling. We can also practice mindful consumption. Be mindful of the content that you consume online. Avoid, again, the mindless scrolling feeds. Turning off notifications. Airplane mode is your friend. This prevents the constant interruption of focus and reduces the frequency of dopamine hits. Using apps mindfully is always important and intentionally. We know that it is important to limit usage or uninstall things if they don't serve a purpose for us. Spending time engaging in offline activities that bring you joy, spending time with people or sports or quality time with friends and family are always natural ways and natural sources of dopamine without any of the potential negative effects of technology use. And of course, I always tell you, to prioritize that face-to-face interaction. That is really important to engage in real-world interactions, and those provide the genuine emotional connections and that natural dopamine supply and release that is so good for all of us.